Hey, before you start that New Year's resolution, we should talk. Come on in so we can discuss it.
Why do most of us suck at setting New Year's resolutions? Every January we get excited, we're motivated, we tell ourselves this year is going to be different, and then it's not. And the stats are brutal. About 45% of people start a New Year's resolution, but by February, about 8% have not quit. So most people just kind of abandon their efforts altogether and they don't follow through long term. Why does that happen? Partly is because we rely on willpower. Our willpower feels strong in January, but it's fragile. It lasts for about 2 weeks. And then the moment that we get stressed, or we get a conflict or a life happens as it does, our frontal cortex, willpower just disappears. And as soon as we get triggered, we don't rise to our goals and what we want to do. We kind of fall back into our old patterns, the same reactions, the same habits, the same behaviors, and then we get the same results. The second reason why we fail is that we try to do too many things at once. I'm going to lose weight. I'm going to make more money. I'm going to run 2 miles. I'm going to go back to school. I'm going to eat better. I'm going to wake up earlier. I'm going to be more spiritual. And we try to do all of those things at once. But that scattered mental energy doesn't compound. It just kind of wastes away. The brain can't focus on everything, so it commits to nothing. The third reason is that we get a wish list instead of a system. We have hopes and plans, and we say what we want, but we don't build a structure that allows for us to execute for success. So we don't have routine, we don't have accountability, we don't have the environment that supports the change that we need. So, here's the change. What if we asked ourselves, instead of, all the things I'm going to do for my New Year's resolution, ask the question, what is the one thing that would define, personal growth or success for me? What is the one meaningful change? Because, real change doesn't come from just trying harder. It comes from focusing wisely and building a system that works, particularly when our motivation fades.
What gets in the way of your New Year's resolutions is not life, it's you. Let's talk about it.
This is Dr. Quentin Moss. This is part 2 of the series, Why We Suck at New Year's Resolutions. In part 1, we talked about why motivation and willpower fail. In this video, we're talking about the habits that quietly get in the way of us reaching our goals. So if you want things to actually be different this coming year, you don't need more motivation. What you need are fewer behaviors that sabotage you and get in your way. So here are the top habits that ruin our goals before we can even make it to February. The first is too much time on our phones. Excessive phone use hijacks our attention and our dopamine system such that, when we're scrolling post after post, it fragments our focus. It increases our tendency to create comparisons with other people, and it trains the brain to avoid discomfort. In order for us to change, we have to experience discomfort. And when the brain is constantly in pleasure mode, highly stimulated, it defaults to easy rewards instead of long-term progress. Secondly, the thing that sabotages us are poor sleep habits. Sleep loss weakens the prefrontal cortex. This is the part of the brain that's responsible for self-control, for planning, on following through on tasks. And when sleep is poor, discipline drops. We become more emotionally reactive, and then our consistency, sticking to the plan, starts to collapse. So it's not that most people lack willpower. It's just that they're exhausted and the brain is too tired to stick to the plan. Third, we often have no accountability. Change does not thrive when we're isolated or by ourselves. So if no one knows your goal, it's easy to quit real quietly. So accountability stabilizes our behavior when motivation fades and when our emotions start to fluctuate. When we share our plan with somebody else, we strengthen our plan. And then fourth, the thing that sabotages us is not writing goals down. Unwritten goals stay very abstract and vague. By writing these things down, we convert intention into tight structures. It creates clarity, commitment, follow through. Goals that aren't written down rarely get scheduled, and what isn't scheduled doesn't happen. So here's the bottom line. One, phones drain your focus. Two, sleep fuels your discipline. Third, accountability sustains your momentum. Then lastly, writing turns hope into a plan. If you fix these things, goals will stop failing because they're no longer built on willpower. They're built on systems that actually work. And the next time, we'll talk about finding that one thing that'll be helpful in you moving forward.
What if our New Year's resolution sucked because we're trying to do too many things? Hey, maybe instead of doing all of these things that we hope for the year, it should be maybe one or two things that we should be doing. Hey, let's spend a few minutes right now and let's talk about it. As we head into a new year, this is what almost everyone does. We make a long list of New Year's resolutions, whether it's to lose weight, to get in shape, to make more money, to start that business, to fix that relationship, or to get disciplined, whatever that means, to be happier, to be more spiritual. And listen, those goals are not bad. They're often really good and spot on. They're big, they're meaningful, they're often connected to who we really want to become. But here's the hard truth about that. Most people don't fail because their goals are too big. They fail because they try to change everything at once, instead of building the foundation that actually supports those goals. When we think about this, think about goals as being the destination, and habits are really the road that gets us there. You don't lose 40 pounds because you wrote it down on January 1st. You lose 40 pounds because you slowly build habits like regular sleep or regular movement and some awareness of what and how much we're eating. If sleep stays bad, energy stays low. If energy stays low, then the motivation eventually disappears. And then the goal quietly dies off somewhere in the sunset, by February. The same thing applies to business. You don't start or grow a business just because, you're inspired. You do it because you're rested enough to think clearly, because you reduce the mindless screen time that it takes our energy and all of our, time for resources, because you protected, time on your calendar, because you showed up consistently, even when it wasn't exciting. Big goals collapse without these small habits actually holding them up. So instead of asking the usual New Year's question, what are all the things I want to change this year? I would like for you to ask a different question. What is the one thing, or maybe two things, that I could do daily that would make sense, and could actually make things better and easier for me over time? Not 10 things, a lot of total life overhaul, but just one or two things. But see, this is how it happens in the brain. The brain does not like change through intensity, how big the change is. The brain likes changes through small repetition. Think about it like this. If you're exhausted, if you're anxious and distracted, almost every area of your life suffers. But if you improved your sleep by even 30 to 60 minutes a night, what would that do for you? What would that unlock? You would have better mood, better focus, more patience, better discipline. That single thing of changing your sleep opens the door to many other things. We can think about with physical movement. You don't need to have the perfect workout plan, but what if you moved your body for 10 to 20 minutes on most days? That one change, that one habit improves your energy, your mood, your metabolism, your sleep, and your confidence. Again, one habit creates many outcomes. This is why most resolutions fail. They focus on the outcomes instead of the small daily inputs. We say, I want to lose weight, but we don't change our sleep. We say we want to be successful, but we don't change our schedule. We say, I want peace in this coming year, but we don't change what we consume mentally all day. So here's the reset. Keep those big goals. Those big goals are important, and I want you to dream big. I want you to write them down because they're important. They do matter. But from there, I want you to narrow your focus. Identify 1 or 2 daily actions that serve as the foundation for those goals. Ask yourself, what habit would improve my energy? What habit would improve my focus? What habit would improve my consistency? Because when you change the right small thing, it creates momentum, and momentum creates confidence, and confidence creates change. And over time, those small, boring, repeatable habits do something very powerful. They just don't help you to reach a goal, but those small things that you start to do day over day start to change who you are. They change your identity. So this year, don't change 10, resolutions. Don't rely on motivation. I want you to build a foundation. Find the 1 or 2 habits that, if changed, will open the door to everything else. Commit to those small things daily. Let time do the heavy lifting. That's how real and lasting change happens. Hey, I hope that this was helpful for you. If it was, please subscribe. Also, please share that with some other people who are trying to build their resolutions, or more importantly, their habits for this coming year. God bless you. So most people don't fail at their goals because they lack motivation. They fail because they don't have a routine that supports that goal. Goals, they really live in the future. But our routines and habits, they live in today. So if you want to finish goals, whether that's improving your mood or getting healthier, growing spiritually or stabilizing your life, you have the goal, but when you're doing the day-to-day, you start with the habit that shows up every day. Every habit follows the same basic pattern. I'm going to give you the cheat sheet and the hack on how to do a habit. First, there is the cue. This is the signal that tells your brain it's time. It may be waking up, it may be an alarm, it may be a thought, it may be once you get into a certain office setting or a location, that is the trigger. But secondly, there is then the act or the behavior itself. This is the actual thing that you're going to do. For example, it could be reading in the morning, it could be exercising, it could be, drinking 2 cups of coffee, or waking up at a certain time, taking your medication. This is the part that people usually focus on, but this is actually only one piece of the puzzle. Probably the most important part of the puzzle is the reward. This is the part that matters more than people realize. In the brain, when we release dopamine, dopamine feels good, and the brain likes to repeat things that feel good. But here's the key. You have to choose a reward that you actually like. Not that most people like or you're kind of gonna like, but that you're gonna actually like or even love, what you genuinely enjoy. So what could that reward be? It could be your favorite coffee. It could be a small piece of chocolate. It could be listening to your favorite song. It could be sitting in your favorite chair. Think of this almost like you're trying to train a dog. When a dog follows a command, it gets a treat immediately. Not later, but it gets that treat right away. And our brains work the same way. If you want your brain to repeat a habit or an act, the reward has to be awesome, and the reward has to come right after the behavior. And that's how the brain connects the dots. I did this and that felt good. When that happens, the brain starts to want that behavior over and over again. Over time, this then creates a craving, the desire, the anticipation of actually getting that reward. And that keeps this habit going over and over without much effort. So every time you repeat this loop, something deeper happens. You're not just doing this particular action, but now you try to change your identity. When you read consistently, Your brain starts to believe, I am someone who reads. When you move your body regularly, I'm someone who takes care of myself. When you show up even on hard days, it says, I'm someone who follows through. This is why habits are more powerful than motivation. Motivation fades away. If it rains too hard, if it's too cold outside, or we're too tired, motivation just goes away. But this identity, these healthy habits, they stick, they create stability, even when our emotions are unpredictable. A perfect routine, you just need a routine that you can repeat. Habit over time. And this stuff, we're creating this habit, it takes a while. It takes probably a few weeks before these things become automatic, not just a couple of days, but probably somewhere in the range of 60 to 80 days. So as we go into this new year and we're trying to address these New Year's resolutions, things that we want to do better, start with the small habit, with the cue, with the action and the reward, whether it's taking our medication on time, whether it's making sure we get to work on time, getting regular exercise, reading more, putting down our phone, whatever it is. We want to have small changes because, once we build this habit, if you do it consistently, your goal would be almost inevitable. Choose one cue, choose one act, choose one reward that you truly enjoy. Do it tomorrow, then do it again, and do it again. And that's how routines turn into habits, and habits turn into completed goals, and completed goals actually fulfill your New Year's resolutions. If you found this to be helpful, please listen to it 2 or 3 times to make sure you get the concepts. Share it with someone who you think may benefit from this. Subscribe to all of my platforms so you can get more information, and God bless you.